Have you ever felt that whisper in your soul calling you to something more, but all the things spinning around in your mind have kept you stuck? Well, what if I told you that choosing excellence could be both easier and more adventurous than you could ever imagine? I am Chelsea DeBruin-Colbert, your host of All Things Excellence. I'm a soul catalyst for excellence who leapt off that corporate cliff and left small-town Iowa farm life in my 20s to follow my calling, helping women come home to themselves by anchoring into who they're designed to be. I create sacred containers where women rediscover their truth, design their dream life, and transform those whispers into action. Now you can find me running my business from the soccer sidelines as a coach's wife, hiking my favorite Arizona mountain, or back in Iowa with my family, or on an adventure chasing my next sunrise, hot cup of coffee and journal in hand. Through intimate conversations about the stories, the traumas, and the transformations behind choosing excellence, we're creating a collective healing journey together. I believe in diving deep into personality designs, experimenting boldly, and learning life's greatest lessons through our beautiful chaos. Every week, my guests and I are going to rip down the curtains so you can see behind the scenes of real transformation as we explore what excellence actually looks like. Not just the highlight reel, but that messy middle where the magic happens. Whether you're seeking inspiration to take that leap or already on your journey and craving connection, this is your invitation to join us. So grab your coffee, settle in, and get ready to discover just how close you are to the life your soul is calling you to create. This is All Things Excellence. All right, welcome to the very first official episode of All Things Excellence. Wow, guys, this episode, it's really all about hope. It's all about that hope, and I want to call it giving the permission to live a life of unhinged excellence. The permission to live a life of unhinged excellence. I'm just going to be so honest, y'all, that I have overthought this episode. It is the last episode that I am recording of all of the first round of episodes that are releasing for our release date. And I have been thinking about it in my sleep as I'm falling asleep and as I'm waking up. And I think it's because I just take it so seriously as how I am introducing this and bringing it to the world. But to bring it down so simply, how we got here today is that exactly a year ago, I was doing my annual dream planning. So somewhere every year between January 1st and my birthday on January 30th, I always work on my 8 areas of growth, setting up how I want my year to feel and what that's going to look like, and creating metrics so I have measurable action steps to actually go after the goals that I want in my life, which we will be talking about on episode 2, which I've actually already recorded. So you can keep going after this episode on episode 2 and you can hear about my New Year goal planning. But when I was doing that a year ago, around this exact week, I remember it just hitting my soul that the time had come, that this would be the year, right? 2024 would be the year that I would be launching a podcast. And I had several people in my life tell me that I should do a podcast. I've been training women, coaching women for 15 years, and I've always lived a life of excellence. It's really wildly important to me. And so it wasn't a surprise when people would say, you should do a podcast. Yes, I know. I just never had felt in that moment that it was time for me to actually do it. And I knew exactly a year ago that 2024 would be the year. So I walk in the kitchen and I tell my husband, Kobe, hey, I'm going to buy Jenna Kutcher's podcast course. And at some point in 2024, I promised you, I'm going to dive into it and I will officially create and launch my podcast. Now, for the record, I did figure out about September, October that I was going to be doing this, and I went to work making sure I got the right assistant and all the right things in place. And my husband also took on a coaching position that took a little bit more than I thought it would out of me. So here we are in the beginning of January 2025 launching it. But I do promise you, I did actually start using this course in 2024 to create this podcast that we're listening to right now. Did tell my friend Lindsay a few months back that I was going to create this podcast, and she was not just your good friend excited, but like genuinely really excited. And we're actually sitting there maybe I don't know, 7 or 8 in the morning, charging her car after we'd already dropped her daughter off at the soccer field. They were in town for a weekend for a soccer tournament. And I told her, and her response, I said, I want to start a podcast and I want it to be about all the things, just all the things, right? All of the things that we as women go through, all of the hats that we wear, all of the areas that we're trying to constantly have excellence in, that we're reading the right books and feeding our families the right foods, and we're seeing the right nutritionists, and we're thinking the right thoughts, and we're driving the right cars. And there's just so many hats that we have to wear, and we have so much information at our fingertips that now it's almost that we're in this age of overwhelm because we almost have too much information on how to be excellent. And I want to create this place where, yes, we're talking about all the things as women that we need to do to be excellent, to give you actionable tips, but also permission to let it be a little bit messy, right? So my goal with the podcast, I said, I want to bring women who live a life of excellence in their specific area. I want to give my audience actionable tips, but I want to also give them this permission to just let it be messy, right? Because messy progress is always better than perfect procrastination. We know that. And her reaction to me telling her this, y'all, it was exactly what I needed. Because she's such a great friend who's known me for 20 years. 20 years ago, right now, we were, in our college dorms watching the OC together. But just to hear her excitement about it and her belief in me was all I needed to bring this thing into fruition. It had been my little girl dream that I would get to grow up, I always say Super Soul Sunday style, and sit with wildly brilliant people in this beautiful backyard and ask them questions about what brought them to excellence. Just extract that brilliance and wisdom out of their brain. And how this came about was a little backstory on me. We always say, are you an Iowa farm girl, or you are a girl who grew up on a farm in Iowa? And I am a girl who grew up in a small town on a farm in Iowa. I couldn't get away fast enough. I'm not going to lie to you all. Dealing with animals and crops and cattle getting out when you're on your way to a birthday party was just not my idea of a fun life. But it was really great because it taught me so many lessons in excellence. It taught me discipline. It taught me it doesn't matter that it's raining and snowing and blizzarding. The animals still need fed. So I do give so many props back to getting to grow up on that farm in Iowa, just because I do think it's where my greatest discipline came from, my greatest willpower came from. But about at age 3, my grandmother had started teaching me my colors so she could teach me how to play the piano. And by age 5, I was in formal lessons. So not only did I have 2 parents that were entrepreneurs, my dad is a farmer, my mom had a wildly successful career in direct sales already. I have this grandma who used to be an educator before she had her own kids, who I was the first granddaughter. I am the oldest daughter and I'm the oldest granddaughter on both sides of my family. There are reels and memes about that for a reason, y'all. It says a lot about a person. And so she had taken me and she was just diving right in like she was a teacher still and teaching me all of these things that she possibly could. Well, by age 5, it was pretty obvious that I was going to excel at the piano. So I was put in formal lessons. And I remember being 5 years old and sitting at that piano for hours and hours and hours. And she would have me practice over and over. But guys, I wanted to be there. I think she saw in me that I had a deep desire to live a life of excellence already at such a young age that she nurtured that, right? I'm 5 years old. I'm sitting there with a metronome, which is this thing that tick-tocks back and forth, making sure you're playing at a really consistent beat. Now, we move on ahead to about 8 to 12 years old. Between 8 and 12 years old, I was actually in a small private school where I experienced an insane amount of bullying. We will say an insane amount of bullying. I mean, nonstop, never ending. I swear it was like these 2 girls, their whole entire existence was to make my entire existence miserable. But what I'm going to tell you all about that was it didn't destroy me. It didn't bring me down. I honestly found it very annoying because I was with my mom in direct sales. And so in her career in direct sales, I was constantly going to all these appointments with her. I was meeting incredible people. I would go to meetings with her. I'd go to conferences with her. I would be in the car with her, listening to all these powerful motivation tapes. And so when I was doing that, I was around so many adults. I was hearing so many powerful, positive things that truly I found the bullying annoying. And people have heard me say from time to time, I am an Enneagram 8, which means I'm the protector, I am the aggressor, I am the challenger. So it was probably God's good design that I was bullied, so I wasn't the bully. But I will say I was the protector of a few other kids in my class that were also being bullied, which isn't a surprise. But it was one of those pivotal moments in my life where I remember making a decision that these girls, who obviously had really bad things going on in their home, that were bringing it to school, to me, who was living a life of just fun and joy. I just came out of the womb like such a total butterfly, social butterfly, wildly confident. You know, their issues were coming after my issues. So I was learning from a really young age that it's not me, that they have something going on in their life. And because of that, they're taking it out on me, but it really isn't about me. It was at age 10 when I was going through all those things that my parents did start me in therapy. Again, y'all, I'm weirdly grateful for that season of my life, because starting therapy at age 10, and I've been there ever since, here we are 30 years later, it created the foundation of excellence in my life of what it means to increase your awareness about yourself and others. Now, moving on to college, I will tell you that when I went into then more that junior high school age, I just really made a decision to play small. I just wanted to play small. I just wanted to blend in. I wanted to be a wallflower. I thought I want to do anything in the world to avoid getting bullied. I just want to get in. I want to get out. Like, let's get, and then I'm going to go figure out what I want to do with my adult life. So by the time I entered college, that really inner driven girl who was secretly wildly achieving with a successful like piano thing. I don't know what you want to say. Like I would literally compete at the state level for piano. I know it's kind of a funny thing when you think about it. If you don't know, you don't know, right? But I would, and I would win, and it was fun. So I was very competitive, but I was very secretively competitive. I decided when I started college that I was no longer going to be secretly competitive. And I made a decision on day one of college how my college career was going to feel. And I very clearly remember making that decision. How do I want this to feel? By the time I get to my senior year, how do I want to feel about my college experience? And from those feelings that I knew I wanted to have, I backed that down and I made a decision what organizations I'm going to join, what friends I'm going to have, how active I was going to be. And I will tell y'all, I didn't think about this ever. Until now, until today, I thought, gosh, that's really funny. Of all the goals I had on how I wanted my college career to feel, I will tell you, grades were never one of those. Being in all the organizations, going to all the fun parties, having all the great friends, having the laugh until you cry memories, all of those wild adventures, the sorority, all of it. Those were a part of my goals and dreams. Those were a part of how I wanted it to feel. Grades were never a part of it. Now, did I get great grades? Absolutely I did. But I'm not going to lie. I definitely put the fun and the feels ahead of the grades. Inside, for me, I knew what was most important for me. And it was creating that life of fun and joy. So after college, I had taken my college internship and I had gotten a job at the place that I had my internship in for several years. Except for I didn't stay in the same department. I was a little stubborn and I said, I just want to get a real job. Let me apply for a really random job and get a job just the way anyone would. I didn't want any special treatment because of my internship, which, back then I should have known that it is never what you know, but it is who you know, and let the people that you know give you a really, really good job that aligns with who you are and what you do. But I didn't do that. I was a little stubborn, and instead I applied for this general job. I was in a completely different department, completely different building, and it was terrible. Honestly, guys, it was really bad. The boss that I had and the lady who was actually my equal, who thought she was my boss, she just really lived her life to micromanage me. And I will tell you one thing to know about me is I absolutely despise micromanaging people. If I give you a task, I expect excellence, but I'm definitely not going to check up on you. And the thing that I hate more than anything is to be micromanaged. Yes, my inner Enneagram 8, we do not want to be controlled. We do not need to be in control, but we absolutely do not want to be controlled. And so this was a really tough job for me. I mean, I was accused of things like dating a guy in engineering simply because I was walking to the furthest bathroom to go to the restroom every hour because I was so bored. And I was bored. I felt like it was a really toxic work environment. She was really negative. All she wanted to do was criticize me all day long. Everything I did, she would nitpick it apart. And so I really quickly became just passive and avoidant at work. And it didn't take very long for me to want to use all of my vacation days. I'd been there a year. I had about 10 vacation days built up. I wanted to go to, again, my friend Lindsay's wedding, actually. And then I wanted to go to a conference, and they said I couldn't have those days. And, to make a long story short, I was fired. Here we are. The one real job that I had working for anyone else right out of college. I made it a year, and then I was probably rightfully fired. Like it was definitely not a great fit for me. But right before I had gotten fired, I made the decision to start working in direct sales alongside my mom. So in this time when I got fired, I was really in what I will call my direct sales and dating era. And in this direct sales and dating era, I was willing to do whatever it took growth-wise to build a career that was going to give me my dream life and to attract the husband that would love to live that dream life with me. To say I was on a mission would actually be an understatement. I would say all I did was eat, sleep, and breathe. Therapy, conferences, books, at the time CDs about how I could become the best version of myself so I would attract the people into my organization to help me elevate that organization, to live my dream life, become who I needed to be to attract the husband of my dreams. I had the love list of 100 things. I prayed over that sucker morning and night, and you better believe I definitely feel that between God and I, we manifested the very best guy for me, who was actually right there underneath my nose. We'd been friends for 5 years. But I remember this moment when I went to a really small conference with someone in my direct sales, and I'm going to give you all this fun little tip. Her and I were standing in the hallway, and I was sharing with her my very driven need to be married. And at the time, I was 25 years old. Well, when you're living in a small town in Iowa, being 25 years old and being single and not being married, you're basically an old maid. I might as well have been 80 years old. And she said to me, "Why are you so driven to be married?" And I said, "Because everyone is married." And she said, "That is not true. Everyone your age is not married." And I said, "Well, where I live, they are, right? They were all married. They were all starting to have kids." And she said, "Do you want to be like all of these people in your town that you already know that are married with kids?" And I said, "Well, what? No. I mean, no, I don't. What? No, of course I don't want to be just like them. Why would I want to be just like anybody?" And she said, "Then stop trying to be. Because when you become the woman that you're meant to be, you will attract that exact husband that God has for you." And I took that as this mission that instead of focusing so, we'll say desperately, on finding a spouse, that I needed to really pour myself into my career and move up in my career. And by moving up into my career, it would cause me to raise the level of excellence that I was living. And that level of excellence was probably what was going to bring that spouse into my life, which in fact it absolutely did. So here we are 15 years later. I've been in the field as a leader and also as a clarity coach for other people outside of that direct sales organization, helping them create excellence to live their dream life. So from that, I want to share with you all today 3 points. Okay. I want to share with you 3 points, 3 thoughts that I really feel like create an excellent life, because that's the point, right? That's what this whole podcast is about. It's about all things excellence. It's about getting grounded in reality of what your circumstances really are right now, with what you can really create with where you are, how you can create that unhinged life of excellence, but also giving you really good actionable tips that can help you get from where you are today a little bit closer to that ideal dream life that you know that you want, and that I believe if it wasn't inside of you, it wouldn't be yours. Like if God took the time to give you a dream, it is absolutely yours. But we do have to raise the bar. We do have to step into excellence to help us create that life, right? So very first, number 1, I can't even start a podcast without bringing this one. Lesson in excellence number 1, we become like those we hang around. And even saying this to y'all, I feel so emotional about it, because this is the number 1 rule that my mom has given us our whole life. Like if there's one thing, right? Like if we could put one thing on my mom's tombstone when she passes away, it would be the quote, "We become like those we hang around." If there was one thing that she drilled into us over and over as kids, it was this. And when I think about how we become like those we hang around, I think about my very first memory of excellence. I was 5 years old and I was with that same grandma. I was at her house and I was sitting at the dining table. And I remember she brought a project over to me and she sat it down. There was this artwork thing she brought and she sat in front of me. And then next to it, she sat a bunch of supplies, art supplies. And she said to me, "Do you see this design?" I said, "Yeah." And she said, "I want you to create this idea, but I want you to create it all on your own. And you're going to do it really, really well. And when you do, we're going to put it into the fair, into the county fair." I said, "Okay." I'm 5, y'all. I was not even in kindergarten yet. This was the summer before I went into kindergarten. And I said, "Well, why would we do that?" And she goes, "Because when you do it and you do it really well, you will get a purple ribbon. And that means that you did it the very best." Now, I think a lot of people could look back over how my grandma and I had our relationship. I think a lot of people could say maybe that she was really hard on me or that she was really critical. I'm going to tell y'all, I've never ever once felt that from her in my entire life. I feel that God hand selected her to be so intentional with me in my life since the day that I was born, knowing that I was always really hungry and really driven. And I think that little kids who are hungry and driven, who don't have someone to be fostering that, can get really bored and get into trouble. So I always thought, what a gift, right? Then again, there she is with my piano lessons, making me practice hour after hour after hour with this metronome, going after that excellence where there's always that next step to be even better. She was never driving me towards perfection, but she absolutely was encouraging me to excellence. My next memory of we become like those we hang around is when I was in 8th grade. In 8th grade, I got switched piano teachers. I went from a piano teacher who was kind of just letting me do whatever I wanted. I would show up every week. I would not have practiced one single ounce. I would play the piece and I would play it perfect. I do have the gift of sight reading, almost perfect on the very first try, sometimes actually very perfect on the very first try. And she would pass me and then I would go home. And so you guys think about that. I was with this teacher who allowed mediocrity because I was able to show up and perform perfectly the homework that she gave to me. She was always just passing me. But that was not the kind of teacher that I needed. I did not need someone that was going to hold my hand and tell me that I was wonderful and awesome and talented. I need someone that was going to challenge me, right? I needed someone that in their own life was striving for excellence, not just teaching kids how to play piano for fun so they could play a recital once or twice a year. So my parents transferred me over to a new piano teacher. And I remember walking in my second week, right? The first week she gave me my homework. I walked back in that second week. I sit down like I had been doing for 4 years, sight read the piece, played it nearly perfect. And she goes, "Wow, they weren't kidding. You really are excellent at sight reading," which means playing it like you've never seen a piece before and you're playing it really excellent. And I looked at her and I said, "Excuse me?" She said, "Well, your parents warned me that you could do this and that you wouldn't practice all week and that you would show up and you would play the piece and you would be able to play it nearly perfect and that your old teacher was letting you pass. But I'm not going to do that. Let me tell you what you need to be doing differently." And y'all, in that moment, I've never felt so called out and so excited in my life because my parents put me around someone that expected excellence, that better than everyone else wasn't good enough for them, but that I needed to be my very best. Which leads me into the next time this happened in my life. I was in college. My college professor, he gave me a D on my paper, and I felt that my paper was better than all of my peers. So I brought it to him, and he literally said, better than them will never be good enough for me with your paper. I did not grade your paper in comparison to your peers. I graded it in comparison to what I knew that you could do. And when I talk about that, it's like, who are you surrounding yourself with? They always say, pick the 5 people you spend the most time with, which in today's digital age, it might be who are you messaging the most? Who are you voice messaging the most? Who are you watching the most on video? And are these people balcony people or are they basement people? Are they pulling you up or are they dragging you down? Who is your mentor in your life right now that's calling out the greatness? You can see in my grandma, you could see in my piano teacher, you could see in my college professor that consistently God kept bringing people into my life that required excellence out of me when mediocrity was so easy. It was so easy for me to choose better than them is good enough for me. But I kept having mentors brought into my life that were saying, actually, no, it's not, right? No, it's not. But y'all, I also had, first as a kid, I had parents that chose to do that, right? They chose to put me in front of people that would drive the excellence out of me. And now as an adult, I do that to myself. I choose mentors. I put myself in mastermind groups. I watch how I pick my friends. So again, look at those 5 people you're spending the most time with. Are they balcony people or are they basement people? Are they helping you establish habits of excellence that cause you to keep your dream in front of you? The second little habit of excellence I want to talk to you guys about is my mantra. This is my mantra. It's been my mantra for over a decade. Please take this the right way. It's God loves me and everything goes my way, even if I can't quite see it yet. Y'all, I say this at least 10 times a day. God loves me and everything goes my way, even if I can't quite see it yet. Because I know a moment of his favor is worth a lifetime of labor. And life is always going to be as great as we make up our minds that it's going to be, right? Whatever we decide life is going to be, however we decide an experience is going to be, that is how great our life is going to be. And this is not some like Pollyanna blind optimism thing, because if anybody wants to bring a giant dose of truth, it's me, right? I always tell my husband, I think your booster group thinks that I'm the no girl. They always bring really great ideas and I always say no because it's not fitting in our budget. No. I feel like sometimes people think like I'm the dream killer, I'm the ideal killer. So don't think that I just have this Pollyanna blind optimism. I have a very grounded in reality stance at life, but I do believe that the universe is always for me. And no matter what's happening in my crash, burn, learn style of life, I do know that everything is happening for me, even if at the moment it's a little bit painful. And it might take years down the road for me to realize why I went through that. I mean, trust me, when I was 8 to 12 years old and I'm being bullied every single day and they're like taping signs all over my desk and they're taunting me nonstop for years, day after day after day. Like in that moment, come on, y'all. Do you think I was like, oh my gosh, I just can't wait to be an adult. I'm just sure this is for me. I just know this is going to be great. You know, my husband, we always say my past is preparing me for greatness. And while I do believe that, I didn't really understand that at age 8 years old, but I can look back now and I can see how all the wild, crazy things, even the really incredibly painful things, were lessons that I needed to learn. Because so often we pray for a river, right? We're like, I need a river, I need water, I need access to water. And God will give us a shovel. And then we complain and moan that he's not giving us anything, that he's not answering our prayers. When in reality, we're praying for a river, he gave us a shovel, and when we dig, then he will send the rain, right? We pray for a river, he sends the shovel. When we dig, when we get into action, then he's going to send the rain. So, which brings me to my third point of excellence, and that is understanding increases awareness. Awareness increases compassion, and compassion increases communication. Understanding, right? When we choose to increase our understanding, when we choose to learn why things are happening to us, why we're responding in that way, why we're reacting in that way. When we choose to learn about other people, like learn other people's stories, y'all. That's the whole point of this podcast. It's the stories, the traumas, and the transformations behind everyone's decisions to choose excellence. I don't even really care what they're doing to create this excellence. I want to know, but why are you doing it, right? Why are you doing it? There was a point in my life where I wasn't hanging around the right people. I remember being 19 years old and walking in the front door of a house of all of my friends who were quite literally passed out around the living room from partying hard the night before. And I remember standing in that entryway and looking across that room and going, Chelsea, this is not your life, right? Like I went off to college and I'd quit that first year and I'd moved home and I just had started hanging out with the people that were left that hadn't gone anywhere. And I knew in that moment I needed to grab a hold of myself because this was not the life that I was supposed to live. And so I started surrounding myself by the people that were choosing excellence, right? I increased my understanding as to why some people were choosing excellence, but also why some people weren't. And when you increase your understanding of why, you're increasing your awareness, right? When we increase our awareness as to what's going on, we also increase our compassion, right? We increase our compassion, we increase our perspective. Now, don't confuse perspective with empathy. I've got a lot of perspective and I've got a lot of compassion, but if you want to look Clifton Strengths Finder, like my empathy is low, it's probably still really low. Like I can say, I see where you're coming from, but it probably still don't have the emotions behind it. But that compassion, right? Because we have compassion for someone because we can see where they're coming from, even if we don't agree. Like we don't have to agree on something for us to have compassion for someone. That will increase and explode our communication. At 24 years old, my therapist at the time, I had become obsessed with learning about my parents. I was obsessed with learning about my parents and learning why they did what they did. I was learning about birth order, anything I could get my hands on that would explain to me about who my parents were. I was reading all the books. And I remember her saying to me, you're really motivated to understand your parents. And I said, if I could just understand why they made the choices they made, right? Because at that time, I was really angry at them for keeping me in that private school. It wasn't even a public school. It was a small private school. Like, why would you keep me where I'm being tortured? Like I'm in therapy because I am so tortured and I'm having stress headaches every day. Why would you keep me there? So I was so driven to understand everything I could about them as to why would you keep me there? Because increasing that created compassion in me for what they felt like they needed to do, for the ways that they were raised, right? And that increased my communication with my parents, but what it also did was it made me no longer angry at them. I thought if I can just understand why they made the choices they did, I'll no longer be angry. Well, on my mission to understanding them, it also helped me to really understand a lot of other people. Because at some point, we have to wake up and gain some accountability in our life. We have to stop blaming our parents. We have to own our own stuff. We have to get accountability in our life. I remember when I was a nanny and I was sitting at the kitchen table and I was reading this book called The Oz Effect, like The Wizard of Oz, The Oz Effect. Not the literal Wizard of Oz, but the book is called The Oz Effect, like O-Z. And it was about the characters of The Wizard of Oz and gaining accountability. And in this book, it's the story of basically you can choose to be a victim to your excuses for the rest of your life, or you can grow up and you can get some accountability. Stop blaming other people, stop blaming your parents, stop blaming your circumstances, and just grab life and make it what you want to make it. So, 3 points of excellence. First of all, you become like those you hang around. Second, God loves you and everything goes your way, even if you don't quite see it yet. Having that expectant attitude. Number 3, understanding increases awareness. Awareness increases compassion, and compassion increases communication. And I'm just going to say, guys, the more that you can increase that compassion and that communication, the greater level of joy and peace you will have in your life. So, to dive more in, you guys keep going on to episode 2. In episode 2, We're going to talk about creating that aligned and unstoppable life. I'm going to break down more on how to create that life of your dreams, how you start tapping into the feels, some actionable items. If you want to follow me for my crash, burn, and learn life, you can find me over on Instagram, or you can go to chelseadbc.com, where I have courses in coaching where I dive deeper into all of the things that we talked about today, or even have the ability for you and I to work together one-on-one. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. I can't believe we're here. Our first episode, officially done, officially recorded. I'm probably gonna hit stop and cry because I made it happen. Here's to doing all of the things that scare us to death, but doing them anyways. Thank you all for tuning in and watching. Bye.